morning, everyone. We are going to begin now. Let me come with my first slide. So today is Saturday, April the 8th, 2023, and it is 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are. We are here at the first module of the Scientific Writing and Publishing Training webinar that is being conducted through the Global Andrology Forum. And my name is Ashok Agarwal. I'm the director of the Global Andrology Forum, and I am so very pleased to welcome you to this program today. Very quickly, I want to explain what is the mission and vision of the Global Andrology Forum. You can also find us on the web. We have a website. You can go www.globalandrologyforum, and you can read about it. We are a group which was started 2 years ago as an international online group, which is collaborating for andrological research and was formalized as the Global Andrology Forum in December of 2021. It includes about 500, now close to 600 participants from close to 80 countries who are mainly interested in both academic and clinical interest in male reproduction and sexual health. And these include andrologists, urologists, uroandrologists, reproductive endocrinologists, embryologists, and researchers. Our mission statement is to conduct the highest quality research, and which includes various types of advanced studies in male infertility and male sexual health. Our goal is to create the highest quality evidence-based research which can be used by clinicians all over the world. Our vision is to create a global collaboration of clinicians and researchers to promote scientific excellence in the field of andrology. We want to reshape the future of andrology by bringing together the most passionate, talented, experienced, and hardworking researchers and clinicians from all over the world. Joining our program is free. There is no fee of any kind, and there will be no fee of any programs that we offer. Please tell to your friends, your colleagues who may be interested in this field to apply. So our main goal is to write, one of our main goals is to write cutting-edge articles on the future of male infertility and sexual medicine. And this brings us to why we are meeting today. Briefly, this is a breakdown of the members from so many parts of the world, which is started with 0, and in less than 2 years, we have gone close to 600, and the number of members keep on joining every single day from all over the world. This is a breakdown of those who are members. They are andrologists, urologists, and so many other professions. The main common denominator is that they have an interest and desire to learn about andrology. So for today's program, as of the last numbers that we have a registration of close to 633, but the data on the countrywide origin is only available on half of them, and this number of participants will be much higher because we still have to tabulate the rest of the data. But from what we see, the participants are from all over the world. As you can see, already 58 countries. We think it could be as much as 70, 75 countries. Why they are attending, why all of you are attending the webinar. And this is how we learned through the Google form that all of you want to learn about scientific research. And that is really a very important reason why you are attending. You are attending to learn the best practices to write a manuscript, which is basically how you will publish your results of research for others to read, to learn about the originality and plagiarism, and to improve your knowledge about scientific writing and publishing. So this is the core of the goal of our webinar today. And all of these things that you want to, you have said that you want to learn are the things that we are going to talk and explain in our presentations. This is the demographics of the participants who are joining us today. They are urologists, embryologists, andrologists, IVF specialists, researchers, students, physicians, GP, other, and biologists. So they come from both public and private groups from all over the world. This is the actual data which has been extracted. And this is the demographic of the participants. As you can see, that although many of you are involved into research, you express your interest to attend this webinar. And then many of you are members of the Global Andrology Forum, as you can see, but many of you, or at least half of you, are not. And we will encourage you to consider examining the membership by going to our website and looking at our program. And if you want to become a member, it is a very quick process. There is a link there for Google Form, which you can complete and put your application. It is completely free. There is no charge for joining. Of course, your application will be screened, and then we'll make a decision to invite you to join our group. Many of you are members of our research team. We have now 12 teams. So this is the program. I'm just about to finish the introduction. Then we will have our first presentation. All presentations are being recorded to make sure that there are no technical problems. So first presentation is by Professor Ralph Henkel. The second presentation is by Professor Walid Al-Ansari. And the third presentation is by Professor Tomer Avidor Rice. Perhaps he may give his live presentation because he is also here physically. The other two speakers probably are not here physically during this meeting. So this is the introduction to Professor Henkel. He is a chief scientific advisor at this company, Logic Pharma. He is also in academics, as you can see. And his presentation is how to put together a good article, publish or perish. And he is going to introduce you to a variety of things which are listed here. The next presentation is by Professor Dr. Walid Al-Ansari, and you can see all the degrees. He has more degrees than all of people in Egypt, and he has a very distinguished career. He will be speaking on writing scientific article that is likely to be accepted, the critical ingredients. The last presentation is going to be by Professor Tomer A. Rice from here in the United States. And he is going to talk about common mistake during manuscript preparation. So I will now stop here because we are going to immediately start our first presentation by Dr. Ralph Henkel. At the end of all the three presentations, we will have a brief take-home message or discussion summary of the talks, where I will speak for 2-3 minutes, and then Dr. Tomer, and at the end will be a recap from Dr. Rupin Shah, who will give the concluding remarks. So this is the program, and now I ask Liliana, please, you can play the first lecture.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ralf Henkel, and I will be presenting on a paper how to put together a good article. But first of all, let me share my screen. So, as a scientist, it is important to publish, but this is not an easy journey. One must really learn the whole process and see what is then going on there. This is the outline of my presentation. It is about the ideal profile of a scientist, general tips and requirements for young scientists who want to develop further, requirements for a manuscript that should be submitted, intellectual dishonesty, originality, plagiarism, the peer review process, and then finally the impact of a publication. When young scientists start with a career, there is a perceived profile of how is a scientist, what is he doing, and there is actually a huge difference in the end to reality. But what is perceived is, I do some research, have some students, help people or treat patients if it's a clinician, as community engagement, and of course one wants to be famous. However, reality is quite different. Nowadays, it's not only a few students, it's having lots of students, having high teaching loads, marking in lots of scripts from these students. Sometimes that is really a problem because they don't write properly, they don't understand what is really taught. One has always to work overtime, and with research, traveling is essential. One has to give lectures, and what this presentation is about, one has to publish. It's not just I want to publish something, it must be a continuous publication track record. Otherwise, we sit with a problem. And this is, Professor McVitt didn't publish, so he perished. And therefore, one actually normally says, for the scientist, publish or perish. So that's the publication is essential. On the one hand, once a person is studying, the lecturer is then requesting students to write something up, great ideas. Students should learn everything, but the other side of the coin is that students don't like it. They feel it as a burden. It's totally unfair. Now my future is in the hands of some kind of reviewer, of a lecturer. But in the end, it's a learning process. Because once we submit a publication for a paper for publication, is not just something that we write here in this cartoon. Good try, Dr. Brown, but an editorial in your chess club newspaper is not what I would call a peer-reviewed journal publication. So we have to follow strict rules and scientific rules. And this is, like I said before, young scientists have to learn it, what to do, how to do it, and how to proceed. Important lessons that have to be learned to become a good scientist is resilience, humility, reading, lots of reading, be versatile, engage intellectually with leaders in the field, talk to them, be optimistic, and essentially, one must have fun with that work. One must aim high and work hard. Coming to this resilience, the job as a scientist is not something for the faint-hearted. It is highly challenging and extremely competitive. So one must be ready and willing and able to compete, because in the end there will be lots of disappointments, and one is actually going for conferences, presenting, one will be faced with lots of criticism, even for publications, firing from flagship of science. They will question you to a point, and therefore science is and must be addictive. If it is not like that, a person will lose interest, a person will then be frustrated. And from my personal experience, from what my doctoral supervisor always told us, the most important feature of a good scientist is a high tolerance for frustration. There must be humility, because it's an essential attribute of an effective researcher. One must be creative, act as a constant spring for new ideas for students, collaborators, because a scientist will be asked, what do you think about it? How can we improve them? What can be added to this protocol? And so on. Of course, and unfortunately, most of these ideas that come maybe during the night or during discussions will be wrong or will not be realized. But then admitting that is wrong, that is critical. Furthermore, one must always be reading. One must gain the basic information. They must gain all this information by reading and getting insight in what is achieved before, what are the different positions, so that they can, in the end, put different pieces that are differently sitting next to one another, can put them together and create new ideas. A successful scientist is therefore always reading, assimilating, and mentally rearranging the information that he or she gets, looking for new patterns to illuminate and find out new paths, what is going on in a body or in the scientific system that he is investigating. So to further and push the boundaries of knowledge. It's not so easy. One must then be versatile, because money is not readily available. And research, especially medical research, is extremely expensive. Funding is constantly low. And the success rate to get the funding for a certain project in many countries is less than 10%. So one cannot just rely on one funding source. They must diversify. One must also be flexible to accommodate government departments, industry, and other funders. What do they want? And one must then ask the scientific questions accordingly. Does it fit into our own ideas? Yes or no? And then look perhaps for other funders, other financial sources. And of course, successful engagement with industry is particularly important and requires high level of professionalism and the capacity to empathize with the goals of a commercial partner. It is not that I can, as a scientist, put my ideas to the forefront and just want the money from the company. And in the end, then they will not be interested. They will not provide the funding. If one is then in a field, one must also actually engage intellectually with the leaders. We must go to conferences and get the information by the leaders in the field. Talk to them, engage with them, send preprints to their papers, and ask him, what do you think? Have you got another idea? Not only go then to local conferences, go to the international conference where the leaders in the field will be, so that you can really engage with them, ask them, talk to them, polish presentations, so that you in the end will be invited to come there. And one must always be optimistic, because that when continue provide the motivation for doing continuous science and do the relevant studies. One must be engaged and excited about what one is doing there. If it's just, oh, no, by the way, this will really lead to problems, and it will then actually not lead to constant ideas to further the boundaries of science and knowledge. Even if it's confusing or one is struggling to get the head around what one wants to achieve, one must be focused and constantly keeping on and finding new ways how to achieve the specific goal. And once one is at the stage when one can think of writing a manuscript, first of all is the research. And not only just the research, it must be good research. One must start with reading the literature first, so that one can then follow and formulate the research questions properly. One should then also not work alone. One must, collaborate and then plan the study properly. It is extremely important that the study has novelty, because if it's not novel, then this will lead to immediate rejection by the journal. One must also think of the statistics, do the proper stats, and this should start before the study already and continues then after finalizing the study. Neat and informative figures and tables are also required, because if the reviewers and your paper will be reviewed by colleagues in the field, if they don't understand the figures and the tables, they will also reject the study immediately. Choose the journal carefully. If you do not meet the criteria and the scope of a journal, that will then also lead to immediate rejection. One must also distinguish between clinical journals, basic journals, and according to what your study is about, you must then choose the relevant journal. And also be aware, there's many predatory journals that you receive constantly emails inviting your papers for publication. Choose the journals carefully, look at whether or not these journals are recognized. Also in terms of subsidies, if you just have to pay out of your own pocket for publication, then it's a different story. And finally here, at this point, be aware of possible intellectual property and patenting. Because if you published something and put it in the public domain before, patenting is completely out of the game. When you write the manuscript, it must be written very carefully. It must actually tell a story that makes sense. It must start with the beginning, has a body of a text, and then come in the end with a take-home message. Good scientific writing demands clarity, brevity, and logic. So the whole text must build on logically. And use simple language. Don't use too long sentences. Observe the rules of good grammar, spelling, punctuation, and linguistic style. Because the readers And in that case, firstly, the reviewers, they will be looking at it. And if there's too many problems, if they don't understand, if you basically by not properly writing, then you will lose the reader, the manuscript will be rejected. Extremely important is plagiarism. Plagiarized manuscripts will be rejected immediately, because that is actually poor scientific behavior. Another cause for immediate rejection is poor English. So write this paper well and learn how to write a paper, because writing a scientific paper is not a given by birth, it must be learned. Then stick to a format of a journal. Submission that is not meeting the criteria might lead to rejection. So that is a problem. And again, it is a matter of learning and sticking to the rules. The journal style. The journals have, each and every journal has its different style, the submission process, copyright transfer agreement, then the format of a manuscript must follow a certain style, title page, summary, or abstract, introduction, materials and methods, results, discussion and acknowledgements, and then the reference sections. The length is sometimes restricted. Units must be observed, abbreviations, nomenclature, and the references and the reference style must be observed. Otherwise, it will be much more work afterwards, or it can be even rejected. We all know about the pressure to publish, and I mentioned it before already. It's publish or perish. And therefore, if we do not stick to the rules, papers, manuscripts will be rejected. But on the other hand, the pressure is to publish good quality, faster, and all this pressure might lead to sloppy research, poor statistics beforehand or afterwards for the evaluation of the data, and to plagiarism. This is what I have seen in as an editor-in-chief of Andrologia, that people plagiarize. This is immediate rejection. Here, a summary of plagiarism in submissions in different areas of the world, and what we see here in Asia, this is also my personal experience, the plagiarism, the number of plagiarized papers is higher than in Europe or America. That could be due to language problems, which is then forcing the writers to just copy and paste. And this is what we see here. Entire articles with different authors, which is just copying. That is very rarely the case. But if it's some parts of articles, even with our authors, there's a duplication of research, which is also not allowed. Or here, some sections of the article, that is already much more. And a problematic area that I always find is materials and methods, because it is extremely difficult to write and basically reinvent the wheel, how a standard procedure has to be described in a different way. So, but you should try and do the utmost best to write in your own words and avoid plagiarism. It also looks that the usage of technology is nowadays much easier, and when one can actually easier copy-paste into their own papers than in previous years. Here's a study that we did where we compared years before 2000 and publications after 2000. There's a significant difference in the similarity index. So that means the grade of the similarity to the original publication. One must always be looking at this dishonesty. Intellectual dishonesty in science is common, and common cause is publish and perish. But as mentioned before, we have to publish to succeed and to stay in science, yes, but it must not be copied, and we have to follow the rules. There's personal ambitions of fully educated individuals, vanity, and of course, a financial pressure. It's personal financial pressure, it's company pressure. One always wants to achieve, one wants to climb the ladder and come to higher positions, but one has to follow the rules, and then one must not be dishonest. The worst forms of plagiarism is to falsify obtained data or to even fabricate data that is not even created in an experiment, and the plagiarism of ideas and words from others. That is basically stealing. It's a criminal offense. And this is just an example of what I came across while checking for plagiarism. Here you can see in this section, it's all completely copied, and the whole manuscript had a similarity index of 52%, which of course this would be rejected immediately. Here similarly, the software, in this case Turnitin, indicates where the similarities are. This is also still a problematic manuscript. Here, this one, a small little amount, that is fine. Less than 10% is okay. Other journals even say they are happy with 15%. But what is definitely more than 25% that is regarded as plagiarism and will be rejected. Here, another originality report on a manuscript here for 39% was rejected. Here is 8%, that is fine. Because one cannot always rephrase standard methods. That is not possible. Important is also that one gives credit to the person who came up with the idea first. So always use other persons' ideas, opinions, and theories, but then give credit to it. Reference the person or the paper. Use quotations from other persons' spoken or written word. Even spoken words must be referenced. Paraphrase other person's spoken or written word. And even if you paraphrase, you should refer to this person, and then actually reference the person or the paper. Use facts, statistics, figures, drawings, or any other type of information that does not compromise common knowledge. So it must not just quote an article in which you found information. This is something that I repeatedly see with students. They read something in a review article, and when the review article is quoted, and they think, I have cited now and referenced. Go back to the original source of the information. Because in many papers that I've seen already is that the quotation is incorrect or incorrectly interpreted, or it is not even properly there. So one must always verify that information. Where does it come from? Does it really stand in the other paper? One must also look at the impact of publications. And where journals, papers, individuals are actually judged according to their research output. Whereas the publications are basically our currency as a scientist, as a measure of productivity or reputation of a scientist. So we should then try to publish in a journal with a high reputation, with a high impact factor. But one must also be clear that the requirements are much stricter in these high impact factor journals. On the other hand, the impact factor has also problems because employers, funders, and so on, they actually misuse the impact factor of journals to measure, to judge the reputation of a scientist. But that is actually the impact factor of a journal, not of a scientist. And then that is then used for promotions, granting, funding, and so on, then it's a problem. One must then look at the age index and the number of publications. In the end, one must not forget to recognize the contributors. They should be mentioned in the authors list or the acknowledgements. And authorship criteria is contribution to the experimental design, intellectual contribution, the writing, but not for money providing, technical assistance, some discussions, whatever that means, proofreading, some other assistance, all these belong into the acknowledgements. And then we go through the peer reviewing process. When you wrote your manuscript, you submit it to the journal, the editors will then look at it and either decide to reject immediately or go through independent expert review, goes back to the editor then decides, weighs the comments, and it's either accept, needs revision, reject, with readmission, resubmission allowed, or manuscript rejection. And this slide just shows you some guidelines for successful publication of papers, and I would not like to go through all this. You can maybe make a screenshot of a presentation that we shared afterwards so that you can read through this. But it really gives important hints and tips what you should do as a scientist. And if you follow all this, writing a paper and publishing will not be running the gauntlet. It will be a success. It will be rewarding. And with this, I would like to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ralph, for your presentation. While we are changing for the second speaker, which is Professor Dr. Walid Ansari, I just wanted to thank Dr. Henkel, Professor Henkel, a longtime friend of mine and a worldwide known researcher in male reproduction. He has also joined live now, he told me. So later on, we will try to take some questions. So now we begin the next. Can you make this larger, please? Well, the next speaker is just being briefly introduced, and his presentation will be played, although Dr. Ansari also indicated that he is present live. No, go back, please. Yes, sorry, a sec. Dr. Ansari's, yeah. So Dr. Ansari's talk is on writing scientific articles that is likely to be accepted, the critical ingredients. So he's going to lay out the secrets of his recipe that he's cooking every time and resulting in an outstanding publication. So please listen to his presentation, which is starting now.
Welcome to this session about writing an article that's likely to be accepted. My name is Walid Al-Ansari, and I'll be taking you through this session. But first, let me share my screen with you. Okay. So, my name is again Walid Al-Ansari, and I'm a senior consultant in the Department of Surgery at Hamad Medical Corporation in Qatar, as well as a full professor in the College of Medicine in Qatar and also in War Cornell Medicine. Writing an article. This is what we usually do. You are here on the left and you are doing your life's work and writing articles, and you expect some to come out here as accepted articles, but through the peer review process, there is a lot of rejected papers coming out here, resulting that the accepted papers are empty. This is quite frustrating, and that's why we have cards to help scientists, something like "sorry to hear about your rejected paper," or "with the deepest sympathy on your disapproved theory," and so on, and this should not really let you down. Right, my outline is I'm going to be talking about authorship, how to write effectively, how to improve your writing, issues relating to the cover letter, structure, title, abstract, and introduction, as well as things that we need to take care of when we are writing the methods, the results, and discussion session. Right, one of the major things and extremely important thing is to plan. Because if you fail to plan, then you are planning to fail. So before writing an article, actually it must really be, if you like, cooking in your head, planning it, who is going to be there, what am I going to do first, etc. Otherwise, you're just planning and putting yourself on a route that will not get you anywhere. Before I go into writing an article, I'm just going to be speaking briefly about authorship, which is a thorny issue when it comes to writing an article. Authorship is usually based on several criteria. First is substantial contribution to the concept or the design of the work, or the acquisition, analysis, or interpretation of the data for the work. And note this and drafting the work or revising it critically for important intellectual content, and final approval of the version to be published, and agreement to be accountable for aspects of the work. Careful about this. Accountability here is very important. You shouldn't be very happy if you're included in an article which you have not read, because if something goes wrong, you are accountable as any other. And please note that these four criteria are not mutual. So it's an and here, and an and here. So you got to have this four, or anyone has to have this four if that person is going to be included as an author in the article. Good. So we don't want this situation. I'm not interested in what the paper is about, Dr. Jones. I just want you to put me on the authors list. We never want this situation, and you would not want this situation too. Right. How do we write effectively? Just take a second to read this. So the secret of good writing actually is to strip the sentence into its cleanest components. anything else that is there that can be removed and will not affect the sentence, then actually don't need to be there, because all it is generating is distraction. It is generating background noise that distracts the reader from whatever you are trying to convey to the reader. How do you improve your writing? Simple. You read, and then read some more. You concentrate on variety of things that you read. You look at sentence structures when you read. You talk and discuss before you write. And you question your writing all the time and see how you can improve it. You think of your audience and share your writing and get feedback from peers or from the writing team. And of course, you revise your writing, and then you reduce. As I said earlier, every sentence there, every word there that can be removed and does not affect the meaning, then it was redundant and it does not need to be there. Right. How about your cover letter? Your cover letter needs to have certain characteristics. This is the letter that you're sending with the article, and is the first thing that the editor sees and decides, could this be an interesting article for our journal or not? It's got to be balanced, not too long. You highlight the importance of the work. That's extremely important. Don't use flamboyant language. It will not get you anywhere. Stress the novelty. Make sure it's addressed to the correct journal, not you are sending to journal X, but actually in the cover letter you're saying the editor of journal Y. That's not good at all. Make sure you get the correct name of the editor, and your letter and your cover letter, as it is being read by the editor, will project a view and reflect how the quality of your paper. So please take care of your cover letter. Now, the structure of your article, it will have the main ingredients, as we know: title, abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, references, and supplementary material. And nothing there. We all know this, and we know that every article must have these sessions. Good. What's that now? About the title? It's the first and only thing that is read sometimes. So choose it wisely. It can be attractive or it can be an absolute turn-off. Do not use usually abbreviations or jargons. Don't overstate what you did, but try to be punchy. Try that it's attractive, it's eye-catching. We all know what PICO is. Sometimes in the title you can put the intervention, the comparator, the population that's used as part of the title. And I finalize it last. In fact, when I'm writing, I usually put 5 or 6 or 7 different titles for the article. And these, as I write and as the paper progresses, change, and we start to focus and we start to omit titles that we think are not attractive until we reach 1 or 2 in the end. And then from there, maybe we choose the most punchy one and the one that reflects what the paper carries. All right, so I'm going to show you some title examples here. For example, nutritional deficiencies among adolescents, population, intervention before and after sleeve gastrectomy. And I'm trying to show something here that's really the feather in the head. It's the first study with a 9-year follow-up. So sometimes you might want to highlight what is unique about your paper in the title. Other example, again, intervention, population, and I'm highlighting that it's the first study with, again, a 9-year follow-up. Please don't write a first study if you are not sure. But by the time you generate an article, you should know the literature very well, that if you claim it's the first study, you must be extremely sure of it. All right, other examples of titles. All right, it could be somehow in a question: multiple nutritional deficiencies among a population undergoing an intervention, and then a question: who is at risk? That's another way to put your title. Or patient-reported orofacial dental pain severity and teletriage decisions during COVID-19 pandemic. And then you end it by a question: does the severity of pain drive teletriage decisions? So that's another way. There is no really correct or wrong way for a title. So all I'm doing here is showing you examples. Another one that starts with a question. Is telediagnosis of dental conditions reliable during COVID-19 pandemic? And then you dish out what was done really. Agreement between tentative diagnosis via synchronous audio conferencing and definitive clinical diagnosis. So it's another example of a title. Or you could use something that highlights the methodology that you use if it's of a high evidence level. For example, this is a single blind randomized clinical trial, and we want to pose that. So we ask, so we state grooved versus smooth uric stent before extracorporeal shock lithotripsy, single blind randomized clinical trial, because here the design is high on the evidence base, so you might want to showcase that. Or it could be the breadth of what you did. For example, bibliometric and visualization analysis of the ecology of men's sexual and reproductive health research in the Middle East and North Africa region. And then this is the breadth of what you did: outputs, trends, shortcomings, and hotspots. So it can be another way to form a title. Or another strength you might have that it's across many countries. So why don't you put that out in your title? Gender difference in students' health complaints, a survey in 7 countries. So you are showcasing the jewel in the crown, if you like. Or another one of the breadth of the work that was done: weight regain and insufficient weight loss after bariatric surgery. Now look at the breadth of the work: definitions, prevalence, mechanisms, predictors, prevention and management strategies, and knowledge gap. And you end up by the methodology used. So it's another way. So there is no right or wrong way, really. You can now sometimes start to be a little bit cheeky, if you like, and you can start with something like what you see might not be what you get. But I don't recommend that you do this at your early stage. Once you have better control of your writing and you know what your article is about, you can start it with a bit of wisdom, if you like. So that's another example. Or another example of that sort: you get what you measure, and then you dish out. So you ask yourself, what is the lesson learned out of this article? And you can start that in the title, something along this line, or something like missing something. For example, you did a scoping review or a systematic review, and you find something missing. So you can start with that. But again, I suggest that you do this in the later stage of your writing. Or one-size-fits-all partnerships, and then you deal with the question that your article is handling. So as you can see, you can start in many ways. There is no really one right way to do a title. For example, a title here, it has the breadth of what was done to show the beauty of the work. All right, moving away from the title to the abstract. I like to write the abstract first, because the article molds and wanes and it changes, and we can wait until this happens and we write the abstract first, so we have the latest findings, and then we put it in the abstract. It's usually a brief summary of the work. It should stand alone together with the title. I should understand everything that happened while reading the abstract. Many readers, by the way, read only the abstract. You need to structure it according to the journal, paying attention to the units and how the journal wants it broken down. Sometimes journals want it broken down into background or objective, methods, results, and conclusions. Other journals don't have these headings, but the content of the abstract will have these headings without the subheadings. And also pay attention to the number of words. It can vary from 150 to 200 to 250 to 300, subject to the journal. Again, example of abstract, here is one with 4 headings. We give a small background here. Sorry, that's another one. We give a background here. We move on to the objective, what was done, some outcome measure, what we measured, the materials and methods, what was done, the results, what we found, and the conclusion. And this one was about late onset hypogonadism as an example. Another example of an abstract, the journal needed the headings, so we have the headings here. and we highlighted the objective, the beauty of our work, that no study did so and so. We are the first. So you can highlight this here. You speak about your patients and your methods, your results, and when writing the results, you might have a lot of results, so you need to be a bit choosy of what are the most salient results that you would want to put to your audience. And sometimes when things are important and significantly different, you put the P levels and you end up with your conclusion, and the conclusion has got to be geared in what you have presented here. You do not put anything new in the conclusion. Another example, again, classified into background, materials and methods, main outcome measures, and conclusion. Again, this was about the association of serum vitamin D and testosterone. So you give a background about that. You move on to materials and methods, speaking about everything that was done. What was the main outcome measure that I was measuring? Patients, and then the results in terms of age and other findings, and you end up with your conclusion. I like to write this first, and this is another example that has no subheadings. Take just a brief second to read it. As you can see, it follows the same way. So it still has a background, it has a method, it has a population, it has a results section, it has a conclusions, but without the subheadings. All right, then you move on to the introduction of the article. You don't put the whole story from the beginning of history. You just do a brief background, coming to the point and define the important gap. And this is very important that you identify the gap in the literature. Where appropriate, you can put a hypothesis. I expect so and so, or I expect those to be less than these, or those more than that. And you identify how you will address it. Your introduction also needs to have the contribution of the study. Why is this work important? How it adds to the existing knowledge, and does it push the boundaries further? This makes it really attractive to journals. At this stage, you really want to catch the eye of the editor. If you are replication, so you've got a study that was done in the USA, but now you're implementing it in your country or this. Yes, it could be attractive, but usually it's unattractive to journals unless you add something to push the boundaries a bit further. I like to end the introduction with the research question that I'm trying to answer. And with that, of course, the aim and study objectives. The scientific justification, the gap in the literature, and the rationale. I like to end my introduction with this, showing the gap. And so if this is the gap, how I'm covering it, and hence here is my aims and study objectives. All right, example of knowledge gaps. For example, is one of our papers. The group stent was evaluated, blah, blah. Surprisingly, to the best of our knowledge, there are no clinical studies. Can you see? You hit the reader in the face. There is none. So we undertook it. Another example of a gap. Generally, some data are available of the outcomes of adjustable gastric Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, with most long-term studies focusing on two procedures. Although laparoscopic sleeve gastrectomy among adolescents has favorable short and mid-term results, information, here is the gap, information on its durability and long-term effects on weight loss and comorbidity are much less, despite its popularity here. And you also show that only 2 studies have done it, so you show that your work is important. Another example of a gap in the literature, despite these challenges, no previous research has systematically explored blah, blah, blah. So you have done your homework, you have looked at the literature, you have identified the gap, you state it boldly, and you show why your work is important. Another example of the gap, here, very explicit, the literature reveals gaps in knowledge. And this is the medical complications. So I say here, and I show the gaps, and even I classify the gaps into the first gap, and I go on later on to show other gaps as we go along. And you really need to be very solid on your gaps, that you have looked at the literature and you know there is no studies addressing X or Y. Another example, Whilst teledentistry offers accepted reliability of the tentative diagnosis, the literature on teletriage during the pandemic reveals knowledge gaps, and you start to dish out your knowledge gaps. Like that, you are actually telling the editor, hey, my work is important. So this is another example. All right, moving on to the methods. I'll just give you a minute to read the slide. This is most important. You need full detail, and you need that it will be replicated if someone wants the analysis, things about the ethics statement, and of course, you know already the concert and the strobe issues, the consolidated standard for the reporting of trials, and the strengthening of the reporting of observational studies in epidemiology. In the results, you objectively present your findings and explain in what was found. It's a logical order based on the methods. You are telling a story, and in the methods, you have outlined your methods, and in your result, you follow the same sequence. Use subheadings by all means to so you don't lose the reader. Use the same sequence as the objective. So if in the objective I say I'm going to go and do X, Y, Z, in the results I dish them out as X, Y, Z. Excuse me. Don't duplicate the results with tables and figures. By the way, results is results. It should not have any discussion. This is a common mistake that some people do sometimes. The figures should be complete. And choose the tables that will tease out the beauty of your data. So sometimes I play in the table, get it this way, then this way, then this way, until it's most comfortable and most easily read. And avoid this almost reach statistical significance. Statistical significance is either significant or not. Almost reached, well, I don't like to use it too much. All right, moving on to the discussion and conclusions. First sentences is an opening statement really in your discussion. Describe your findings, and then move on to the main findings of your study, putting it in context, and then move on to any agreement or disagreement with the published literatures. Don't forget the strength and limitations, and please state your limitations. In other words, criticize yourself before someone else criticizes you. Keep the conclusion sensible. Don't overstretch, and don't get into a syndrome that's very common, which is over-conclusion. Don't over-conclude your work. Your work speaks about X and Y. You cannot conclude anything about Z. And always outline the next step for further study. I'm afraid there are some points here. Any disagreements and disagreement with the published literature, you can leave it at that, or sometimes you can speculate. Okay, we are different than the USA or than the UK, but why? Maybe we had a younger population, maybe we had males with certain characteristics, maybe it was done in a certain time of the year. So you try to speculate here the wisdom, why you are different, rather than saying we were more than those and we were less than this, and it becomes repetitive. Try to add some life to it, by understanding when there is agreement, why there was agreement, or when there is disagreement, why there was disagreement. Okay? Right. Publish always in a peer-reviewed journals, because if you don't publish in a peer-reviewed journal, you actually have not done any favor to yourself. It's got to be peer-reviewed, and in my view, it has to be in PubMed. As you can see, a scientist telling the other one, if you can't say anything peer-reviewed about your work, don't say anything at all. So don't publish it in a newsletter or whatever, etc. And this is important because you think about where you will publish it in the beginning when you are designing your study. In the discussion conclusion, you are defending your work. You are defending your work here against many peer reviewers. You have to stand on solid ground. You know what you did, and you can always discuss comments that are coming from reviewers. As the picture says, I don't believe I've ever seen a scientific paper defended quite as vigorously as this one. And careful, peer reviews, when they put their comments, it can come to you of 2 or 3 pages of comments, and you will have to defend it. Before I end my presentation, I want to say two things really. The writing of an article is not linear. You don't start with the introduction and move on to the methods and move on to the results and then you move on to the discussion. Actually, it's very iterative. You write something in the beginning and then you are going on to write the methods. But when you write the methods, you find out that you forgot something in the introduction. So you run back to the introduction and you straighten that out. Then you start to put on your results. But when writing the results, you find out that there was a point in your results that actually is a strong point, but that was not represented in the introduction. So you run back to the introduction and magnify that point, and then you go into the discussion. It's very iterative. You go to and fro and to and fro. And the best ideas to improve your manuscript will only come when the manuscript in your head is in your head, because the best ideas will not come to you of how to improve your manuscript when you are right sitting in front of the manuscript in front of your computer. It will come to you if the manuscript itself is in your head and you're perhaps riding your bicycle or walking your dog or watering your plants, doing whatever other thing that you like. And while doing it, because the manuscript is in your head and it's cooking in your head, you will suddenly say, maybe I can put this there or maybe I can modify that. And that will not come with you sitting in front of your laptop. So immerse yourself in your manuscript that it's in your head, because the best ideas are going to come to you on how to improve your manuscript when you are doing something totally different. At least that is my experience. That's number one. The second thing I would like to tell you is that you run in the manuscript forward and backward and forward and backward until everything slots together and the sequence is nice and everything hangs together and there is no contradiction between any part of the manuscript. Picture yourself in a football pitch. You see how the players are running up and down and up and down and up and down. That football pitch is your manuscript, and you are running here to straighten this, and then you are running all the way to the other side to straighten that until your pitch, i.e. your manuscript, your article, is of the quality that you would want. I hope you found this useful. Here is my email. Should I be of assistance to anyone, please do not hesitate to contact me. I thank the organizers for inviting me to present this, and I hope you found it useful. Thanks again. Bye now.
Thank you very much, Walid, if I may call you. Dr. Walid, Professor Walid has done an outstanding job in giving this presentation, giving all the secrets that really have made him one of the most distinguished scientist, clinician, and someone that you will find and you have heard to be just an outstanding person. The way that he explained his thinking is that things don't just happen just when you are sitting in front of the computer. This is a process which happens gradually and something that you have to immerse yourself. You really have to understand the research. The entire manuscript, he said, will come into your head, and it is cooking there, and then the thoughts come in, and you are not writing in a linear fashion, like starting with the abstract. It is not a mechanical process. The whole exercise of manuscript writing is one which requires a holistic view of everything that is out there. Unless you are really familiar with the literature, don't even attempt to talk to Dr. Walid, because you really cannot master the science of writing a very good manuscript for a high quality, high impact journal. You have to be a master. And I see people coming in and say, well, writing research is not my job because I'm a clinician. I'm a very busy person. I'm doing a lot of surgery. Research is for, people who are doing research in the lab. And I don't really think I am the one who can write the paper. It is just not my game. And I said, look at Dr. Walid. Dr. Walid is one of millions of clinicians who are also excellent, top-class scientist and researcher. So one is not exclusive of other. So for someone to say that I am XYZ, so I cannot do this. This is just an empty excuse. You really don't want to try. Then there are those who come to me and say, well, this is manuscript writing is new. I have never done it. And I say, listen, everything in life at one point has to be new. When you were born, you were new. Or when you go to nursery school, you were new to that. When you go to the medical school, the stethoscope was new to you. When you went to the lab, the test tube were new to you. How do you really get familiar if you have that fear of something new? You need to get over that. And as Dr. Walid really elaborated, I mean, I think if you hear his wisdom, he encapsulates the things that he does in such a manner that really tells there is a science, there is an art to writing the manuscript. And first of all, how it will happen, you really need to make a commitment. You cannot become Dr. Walid just by listening to his presentation. You will gain a lot of ideas and points of view, but actually you have to make a commitment to yourself that this is what I would like to do, and I would like to raise the quality of what I am doing to a higher level. And this is where Dr. Walid's presentation, the presentation by Dr. Henkel, will come into play. So now I want to thank Professor Walid one more time. I know he's listening. And now we go to the next speaker, our third speaker, Professor Tomer Avidor. I just simply call him Tomer because this is American way. We don't have so many type of felicitation, just like in many other parts of the world. Tomer is a simple guy. He's a professor, but you will not feel, he will not be offended if you just call him Tomer. He will be actually very happy. And he's going to tell his life's experience, because this is what he teaches his students. He teaches researchers, his medical students, and he's a very well-established scientist and a researcher and a faculty here in Ohio in the University of Toledo. And he's going to tell common mistakes that happen during manuscript preparation. This is a must attend listen lecture because it tells you what kind of mistakes that happen and based on our own experiences and how you can avoid. So let's play the video of, I don't know whether he's going live or he's playing the video. Tomer, are you, or Liliana, what's the plan?
Yeah, I can do it live if I can share my presentation here.
Oh, wonderful. Please go ahead. You
Me,
look so much more beautiful live.
let me try to. Just a second, I'm going to share my screen. Do you see the screen right now?
Not right now.
You don't see it?
No. No, not yet.
Share.
Yeah, it is coming. Now you have to make it bigger. Yeah.
I think I need to.
No, first you have to click there.
I think I need to share a different screen. Let me do a different share. Stop sharing. Share screen. I'm going to share number 1. What about now?
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
Okay, excellent. So thank you all for the opportunity to present to the GAF audience. And I noticed that many other people about common mistakes during manuscript preparation. So it is important to understand that today many of our papers are actually open access papers. They are available online, and therefore there are many different ways to assess our papers. It's not only, like was mentioned before, the traditional way of looking on journal impact factor and looking on citation to evaluate the specific paper. But if you go to the website of a journal, for example, and you look at a specific paper, you could see that there are many measures of evaluation a paper. You could see how many views. Here's an example of how many times people view this paper, how many times it was downloaded, how many times it was tweeted, blogs, and then there's usually some overall rank. So the key thing to understand that today, there are many more ways to look on your paper. And because there are so many ways to look on your paper, actually, the paper is seen by a diverse audience. It's not only like in the past, you would expect that another expert read your paper. Today, the paper will be read also by student, and even sometimes if it's have clinical implication by patient, even basic papers sometimes will be read by a general audience. So as you write the paper, you do need to be accurate and write all the detail that expected by the expert, but be aware, in our time, clarity is also expected so the generalist or the students will be able to understand it. And also, please add the simplicity needed so a patient can read it. So you really need to write in a multidimensional way. It's a challenge, but there is a way to do it. The way that you do it, there are several strategies. First is to use different part of the paper to reach out to different audience. Here's an example of a graphical abstract, how a certain journal expected. Those days, many journals want you to have, in addition to the abstract, also a graphical abstract. This is very useful for people that are like a visual representation of what you are saying. Important thing is to avoid jargon. This is very common by some people. They use language that only known to the expert in the field. So please explain every complex concept. Do not assume the audience know it. Another point that I'm going to emphasize a lot during my presentation is the take-home message. You need to be repeating again and again the take-home message of your paper. It needs to be clear and it needs to be upfront. And have a summary or a model picture at the part of the discussion section at the end. Again, visualize in a simple way, what are you suggesting? It was already mentioned that paper have many parts: title, abstract, introduction, method, result, and the results usually have figures and supplementary information and discussion and sometimes conclusion. But this is not always apparent. There could be a paper like this is a high impact paper in science, for example, that you don't see all those parts. So of course, all the parts are inside, but you don't have them called up. And sometimes the abstract and introduction can be merged to one thing. So when you write a paper, you of course want to all have all those things, but be aware that as you move on to publish paper and your paper may not be accepted in the high journal impact that you wanted, and you need to reorganize it, you may need to organize it in different ways. But be prepared to have all those parts either together or in isolation. Okay, let's speak about one of the most important things that authors need to do, which is writing the main finding. What is the main finding? And the key here is that you need to repeat the main finding of your finding, and you need to do it again and again and again in different parts of the paper. So here are some examples from a journal that we published recently, and that The title need to, of course, state the take-home message. For example, the title here is a take-home message telling you something that once you read the title, you don't really need to read the paper. Everything is here in the title. But if you want to know more, you're of course going to read the abstract. And in the abstract, again, there is the main finding summarized. And again, when you write the introduction, usually at the end of the introduction, at the bottom of the introduction, after you give more information and people understand better what you're really saying, you again bring the main finding again. And you do it in the result. And the result, actually, you break the finding to pieces. And it's very nice if a journal allows you to write subtitles, and then you make the subtitles to be a take-home message. They are saying something specific. Somebody read the title or the subtitle, it substitutes for the whole paragraph. Of course, the paragraph is important to get more information. And again, in the discussion. At the end of the discussion, again, you restate. So make sure the audience hear again and again the main finding. They can see it in different places, and they can see how the whole paper come together to one conclusion, which is your main finding. As you write your paper, I find it very useful to think about some repeating elements that all papers have, and we call it the 1+7+1 rule of scientific communication. There need to be, of course, one title, and the key thing is that the title will be, again, a take-home message title, and I'll give an example shortly what I mean by that. And then you have the seven fundamental content elements. When you want to communicate scientific discovery, when you discover something and you want the people that you're spending them evaluate and understand what did you contribute, what is your contribution, and how this is allow the field to move on, you need to tell them 7 things. You need to tell them what was known before the paper, what is unknown, what is the hypothesis, what was your approach, what is your result, what is your conclusion, and what is the future direction. This is the 7 elements that you want, and I'm going to kind of, and after that, you need to have one accurate, comprehensive, and up-to-date, and of course, fair reference section. This is very important. Paper is not only about what you found, it's coming in the background of what was before. Okay, let's speak about the title of a research paper. And again, I'm going to emphasize this from my point of view, that it needs to be a take-home message paper. And what do I mean by that? Here's an example of a take-home message paper. A novel atypical sperm centriole is functional during human fertilization. When you read this title, you know, oh, this paper discovered a new type of structure, a new centriole, and it's functional. Many people choose to use a title that actually more suitable for a review paper, which are really more of a subject line. Yeah, subject line will be the role of the sperm centriole in human reproduction, the known and the unknown, for example. This is telling you what you're going to speak about, but it does not really telling you what is the new finding, what is the main message. So I usually suggest use a research paper that make a new discovery, give us the take-home message, so we know exactly what we learned from this paper. Take-home messages are not only confined to the title of the paper, you should also use them in a figure. If you have a figure and the figure says something, say the take-home message of the figure, so people understand exactly what you're saying. For example, in this figure 5 of the paper, the remodeled distal centriole is functional in vitro. You understand immediately, okay, this figure shows that in vitro, this structure, the distal centriole, is functional. Don't tell us something that is just a subject line, the function of the remodeled distal centriole in vitro. Yeah, it is the subject of the figure, but I don't know why really the take-home message. Here it say that it is functional. So it's really rearranging a little bit the sentence, so you are making sure that the audience know what is the take-home message of the figure. The same thing is as you write the paper and you have subtitles. In the subtitles, again, need to be the take-home message of the whole paragraph, and in the result, you have many result sections. So each one of them will have a subtitle that is take-home message. And again, in this case, the distal centriole contain a subset of centriolar protein. Okay, I learned something. I know what the distal centriole contain. Do not say the centriole protein location or the content of the atypical centriole or the distal centriole. This, again, is a subject, but you must read the whole paragraph before you read it. In science, we like to know where we are going, and then the reading become much more efficient and much more clear. Tell us in advance what we need, and we then read carefully to see how this is really demonstrated in the paragraph. So again, the 7 fundamental content elements that need to be used. Actually, it's not only for writing, it's also when you present a poster, when you present a seminar, when you present any element of contain new information, any new discovery. Those are the elements that we want. Again, what is the known? The known describe what was known on the same subject before the paper research was started. We want to know what was known before the whole research that now we are going to speak about. Why this is necessary? Because this lead to the unknown. It describes the research gap. Yeah, what we do not know in this area that, of course, we want to address. And of course, now we are providing our hypothesis. We're explaining what do we think is the answer for this unknown based on our study. And then we describe the approach. And when I speak about the approach, I don't speak about the method section, which is, as mentioned before, is a very detailed description. I really mean about the conceptual design. Why did you use this approach? How come this approach is the one that allows you to test the hypothesis? And after explaining that, you describe the raw finding. This is the result. You then conclude by adding the result to other information to make a general conclusion. And then you speak about the future direction, which can be either more mechanistic, longitudinal, or more similar studies, more longitudinal studies, more lateral studies. Here I'm going to give you several examples, and they're going to be color-coded for an abstract. And again, this is an abstract. In most basic research, the abstract is not divided to different parts. It's just a general abstract. And you could see that it contains those different elements, many times in this order, but sometimes the order is a little bit shifted. And you want to know when you write the paper, you do want to hit all those points, because this will create the clarity that is needed by the audience to understand what you're doing. Similar things is in introduction. However, in introduction, the emphasis is on the three first fundamentals: the unknown, the known, the unknown, and the hypothesis. So this is really, if your research has several known elements, they require then several paragraphs that describe different elements of known. What is known? It's very important to know that the known means you need to provide the minimum essential to understand the question, hypothesis, and the method used in the paper. Only the minimum essential. Do not provide information more than what is needed to understand your paper. And then you provide the unknown, and you write your hypothesis, and also the support for the hypothesis. How come this hypothesis? What is the basis for this hypothesis? And you finish your introduction, again, by one paragraph that summarizes very quickly, at the end, the approach, result, and conclusion, and sometimes the future direction. As you go to the paper itself, the paper is made of results section. And hopefully, your paper allows you to write a take-home message title, and you do that on the top. If not, you could use the first sentence to really introduce the take-home message of what you're going to speak about. And then, again, every section of the paper need to have some of those elements. It really changed a little bit based on the subject matter and how the different parts are constructed. But as you write, consult this menu of the known, unknown, hypothesis, approach, result. Here you could see a section that is made mostly, this is a result section, telling you what is known. It then jump to the result and have the conclusion. Here's a different section. We found it better to have the approach here. Then, because the approach was very important to understand the experiment, you go expand the concept of the approach, then you describe your result, and then you move to your conclusion. So look on these 7 elements and choose and pick them based on what is appropriate at the different result section that you want to do. And again, the discussion again, go through those 7 elements. Usually a discussion starts with one paragraph that summarizes the result and give you the conclusion. And then after that, we are really emphasizing much more energy, because we're in a discussion section on future direction, different types of direction, and adding into the information that was known before. The 7 elements that I mentioned to you right now is not only about a paper that you finish to write. You could do it actually even for any writing that you do, even futuristic. For example, if you want to, you're planning your paper, you're just about to think about your paper, you're starting to create your first draft, or you're writing a grant application, for example, you're speaking about the future, what you want to do. You start, you of course give some expected take-home message. You don't know yet the take-home message, you have expectation. And then you could say, okay, I know that, I don't know that, this is my hypothesis, this is my planned approach, this is my expected result, my expected conclusion, expected future direction. And of course, you start to build your comprehensive reference list. Now I want to move to the figure. Figure is actually one of the things when I review papers or act as an editor, I see that some people do not really utilize the full power of a figure. And what I want to help here right now is to provide you how you can make the most impact when you discover something and you want to show it, but you also want to make sure the audience understand you. So first thing is to understand that a figure is really a very complex thing. It represents your finding, but there are many panels. This is a panel, this is a panel. There are actually multiple panels here that you could see. It's only a single figure, okay? So be aware that it's okay to have many different elements, many different panels. What are those different panels? So it's very good, it's very useful if you have a drawing that really simplify and provide a clear picture. For example, this figure is about a structure called a centriole in the sperm. But we first explain to them, here is a sperm structure because the centriole sits in the neck. So we provide a drawing. And then we are drawing the two types of centriole because one look normal, one look a little bit different. Where it is located, we draw it, we explain it. The audience, especially the unexpert audience, can understand it. And then you provide what we call a landscape picture, a low magnification picture that show you the overall presentation. Basically, this sperm is what you see here. So it just allow the audience to know what is the subject matter, how it overall look, maybe some general remark on the quality of the sperm that we are seeing here. Only then, after you have done all those preparation, you are ready to jump to the subject matter. In this case, the paper focused on the centriole. So you could see here that they are here in high resolution, high magnification, that people can see the centriole clearly and they can make a judgment and understand what they are seeing. Another important thing is you have in this picture, you have three panels, C, E, and G. They are all addressing different treatments. You want people to be able to compare the different treatments. You need to spend some time when you organize the figure and orient them. The sperm in the picture do not sit nicely like here in the same orientation. We need to rotate the picture, we need to flip the picture, and then we put all the sperm in the same orientation, head on the top, tail on the bottom, and more than that, we actually, if you see, the sperm is asymmetric, and we always make sure that the proximal centriole is on to the right, and the axoneme is in the middle. So we do that so the audience can easily look and compare between different pictures. Very important to spend the time to create a good quality figure that is easy to understand. Of course, you want to add annotations, add some description, either color-coded or not, but you do need to do it so people can follow what are the different, but don't assume your audience know that this is the nucleus, or this is this protein. You do need to, and this is the proximal centriole. You do need to say it and in the figure so people will easily identify. Scale bar, of course, make sure you have scale bar. Scale bar need to be, in this case, you have 3 magnification. So you need to have 3 different scale bars. This is critical. Then you need to have a very detailed figure legend. Yeah, make sure your figure legend really explain so everybody can understand what is in the figure. Every acronym you use in the figure need to be defined. Okay, you're allowed to use acronyms in the figure because there is not a lot of space, but you need to define them immediately below. If you use some colors, it's good to expand. Oh, this protein B is magenta. Okay, so make sure you are really laying out everything, expanding very well. This is a very common thing that I need to ask people, please rewrite your legend because it's not fine enough. Now I want to move to the issue of citation. Actually, the Global Andrology Forum published just recently a paper, a kind of editorial that really addressed this major issue of citation error. And I just kind of going to summarize for you very quickly what is this paper said, and you're welcome to read, because citation are an important integral part of the paper. And here are some common mistakes. A common mistake is not citing, actually. You write a statement, every factual statement, every statement that says something that you say, people found that and that must have a citation, okay? So once you finish to write a paper, be careful, read everything carefully, and if you say, I state that this is known, you must put a reference, add to it a reference. There are sometimes factual errors because people either do not read the full paper or they act from memory, they remember something, that create really a lot of mistakes in the reference that you're doing. It's very important that you'll read the paper. It's actually what I recommend to my student. As you write the paper, you download the paper and you shed the area of interest in yellow or something, so you could always go back and confirm, because you may change the sentences as you rewrite and rewrite, so you could easily confirm that really what you meant originally is what you are saying right now. So you do need to carefully look on the fact that you are citing from a paper. Another issue is selective citation. This is where people just mention their favorite scientist or their favorite results because it's convenient for them. It's very important to be comprehensive when you are making a statement. And really the way to deal with it is really, once you are a little bit advanced and you know what is the paper is about, is do a quick search on the subject by and make sure that you really give all the different perspective and the different references. Many times it's more than one reference. Yeah, it's not just one reference to make your point. Another thing is incorrect source of type. This is actually a very common mistake, and I think somebody already mentioned it before today. There are two types of citation. There are primary literature and secondary literature. Primary literature is when a scientist discovers something, he published the paper. Secondary literature is a review paper or chapter of a book where they look on the whole field and summarize it for you. So many people find it easy to write review, but you cannot really trust the review, and it's not sufficient to just rely on the review. You do need, after you find something in a review, read the literature, the primary literature, make sure that it's really usable for your paper, and cite the primary literature. If you want, you may add the review if you need sometimes, but cite the primary literature. Insufficient support. This is really happened when sometimes, because science is evolving and there was one idea in the past and there is a new idea right now, or some subject matter that was not touched for many years, you may need to cite, of course, the tradition is to cite the original paper, whoever the first discoverer of the information, you to cite this first paper, maybe it's very old, but then you could support it with more recent paper that tell the audience, oh, you know what, it's an old idea, but it is supported recently by some other paper, and maybe even a review to show that it's an acceptable idea. So sometimes you do need to write more than one reference, and you could see that you need to think sometimes, what is the right strategy for a specific claim that you are making. And then, of course, at the end, there are many technical errors because formatting all the references, putting them all together, and then maybe need to decide to change to a different paper, to a different journal, which is have a different format. And the solution for that is really to use one of the programs. There are many programs. Here are some examples that if you use them during the writing of the paper and you put them the reference inside, they make it just much more accurate, and the chances of mistakes is reduced dramatically. Okay, I want now to go around few points, few things that make the writing more clear. I think some of them are already mentioned, but I just want to emphasize. One of the big mistakes that people use, do and interfere with reading is using acronyms. Acronyms, when you read a sentence and you're not expert that the acronym really makes sense to them, you're just new to the field, or you're more of a generalist, acronyms do not make sense to you and you need to memorize them. They disturb the reading. So do not use acronym, or let's say use them at least 10 times, only when you mention something at least 10 times. And make sure it's well five to the acronym. Some people take one word and make an acronym from it. There is no point. It's the same thing. Use the full word. If it's like a 5-word concept, yeah, of course, maybe if you use it more than 10 times, it makes sense to make an acronym. So, and this is actually a point that was mentioned already in the literature. And it's people are aware that when you write, be aware, avoid as much as you can, use acronyms only when they are at least 10 times, and really if you gain something from it. If you don't, better not to use it. Another thing that can create a lack of clarity is synonyms. You know, when we write at least in the United States, when you write a good paper, literature paper, they ask you to use different way to express the same thing using different words. It's enrich the idea. But this is not really good in science. In science, if you want to make sure people know exactly what you're speaking about, it's better to use the same exact word. Do not change the terms. So if you decide to use this name of an animal, don't start to change it to different references. Use the same title and repeat it again and again. If it's a little bit boring, it's better boring and clear than, oh, I'm not sure what he means here. The caterpillar, he means that, he means something else. Avoid synonyms. It creates clarity. The other thing is really how to deal with when you have certain verb-noun repetition. An example here that I give in my field of research, we speak about a very similar concept. They are similar, but they are distinct. Centriole formation is one structure, centrosome assembly, and cilium. So rather than use different verbs that are identical, like centriole formation and centrosome formation, we actually segregate them, and we make sure that throughout the text, whenever we speak about centriole, it's always formation, centrosome is always assembly, and cilium is always nucleation. Again, it makes sure that close by concept have a very clear separation, and you, as a reader, when you read it, you know very quickly that this is the repetition, this is the rule of writing, and it's much easier for you to read the paper. Okay, this is really the main thing that I wanted to say. I just want to repeat some of the key points that I mentioned. Remember, we are now in a time where everybody can read your paper. They're online. And you do want everybody to read your paper. You want your impact to increase. And you do need, because of that, make sure that your writing is multidimensional, both to the expert and to the very person that is generalist. Repeat the main finding. Really, this is the easiest way to create clarity. Repeat the main finding. Again, you're going to rephrase it as the reader understand more and more and more. You could say it in a more complex way because you created some concept in your writing. And again, use this 1 + 7 + 1 rule. Actually, you could use it in any type of scientific communication. If you find something new, it becomes clear if you have a good take-home message title. If you start with the known, then you tell us what is unknown. You tell us what we think is the answer, the hypothesis, just the concept. What is the key? Why did they use this approach? What is my result? What conclusion? And then how this lead to the next step? Because all research is just one step in this very long chain of steps leading to a finding, and end up with an accurate, comprehensive, up-to-date, and fair reference section. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate your patience. And I want to thank Ashok and Rupin for the opportunity to present here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tomer, Professor Tomer Avidor, for a phenomenal presentation. We had 3 outstanding speakers, some of the best speakers and researchers in this entire world. We have brought through this program a complete package of activities related to scientific writing, and with some of the most distinguished speakers who gave their presentation. So what I would like to do for a second before we go to the concluding part is I'm going to have a small reflection from my side for 2-3 minutes, followed by Tomer, and then we have a concluding program from Dr. Rupin before we go to the last part. So let me thank you very much, Tomer. The live presentation was just outstanding. I think we do the recorded because we want to avoid the technical glitches and also to allow people to do their things, the speakers who may not be available at the time of the presentation. So very quickly, let me go to the next part, which is, let me just a second. And let me make it bigger. So I just want to reflect. I think we had so much of extremely valuable advice and suggestions and personal experiences which were shared. And it is not just for the beginners who have no idea about research or who are just trying to venture into it, but for people who have been in the research forever, for their entire life. These are secrets that nobody tells. Why Dr. Walid is so well published, nobody knows. I mean, he shared his secret ingredients in his presentation. Look at the presentation from Professor Ralph Henkel, Publish or Perish, and then the common mistakes that Dr. Tomer brought from his wealth of experience working at Harvard and working at so many institutions, and now a full-fledged professor with a very distinguished record and publication in some of the most prestigious journals in the world. And I must say that the first paper that he published may not have been published in Nature or Science, but it is a process. So I must tell all of you not to be scared of the process. Remember, you are going to learn as you go, but by listening to the experts, listening to the people who also started just like you will gain a level of comfort and expertise which will take you time to gain. So I think this program provides you those nuggets of knowledge which are extremely valuable. We all have to struggle to get where we are. And even now, writing a paper and getting it through all the hoops is never an easy thing. And I always tell everybody, if you already know about your research, you know everything, and that you are going to be able to publish it in a very good journal, then there is something wrong, because the research is like an adventure. Of course, you plan everything, you do everything in the right way, but still the chances of success is only 50%. So you increase your odds of success by doing the things that you heard here, and you may hear in other places, or you will read in other places, and that increases your chances of success. So the success is not 100% in anything in life. You really have to work very, very hard, but also work smart. So I just wanted to share a few things from my vantage point, if I may. Well, I think for me, it is hard to add anything which is going to be different than what you heard from so many speakers today. So it is impossible to add anything new, but I try to summarize few points from my vantage point. So be clear and concise. I mean, I think successful writers like Dr. Walid, Dr. Henkel, Dr. Tomer are able to communicate complex idea in a simple, clear, concise manner. This is the key. They use simple language, avoid the jargon to make their work accessible to a wide range of readers. As you heard from Dr. Tomer, it isn't just the scientists and people like Dr. Walid who are reading your paper. They're general people. There is a whole variety of people because of the advent of social media, where all these open access journals are really connecting. There are so many ways, the Twitter and the LinkedIn and I don't know. I mean, all these things that are there, I mean, they are really changed the landscape of scientific research and how it is communicated, how it impacts not only the scientists, but the people all over the world. So this is amazing. Next, in my view, is follow the scientific method. It is important that your writing needs to be well structured, organized, with a clear introduction, body, conclusion. It is important that you know that each section should flow smoothly and logically from one to the next, which I just explained. Good research is skill. That is what you heard from Dr. Walid. Successful scientific writers really are skilled. They are skilled at conducting thorough research and reviewing relevant literature. So if you don't have good research, you cannot invent a good paper out of thin air, even if you are someone as smart as Dr. Walid. You really have to have the research. Without the ingredients of good research, good data, which have been conducted, you really cannot do something which will be completely, I think, artificial. So you need to be able to critically evaluate sources and synthesize information from multiple sources. This is important. Attention to detail. I think everybody knows without that nothing happens. Scientific writing requires, just like you are doing a micro thesis, for example, Dr. Rupin and so many of you who are doing it, it requires attention to detail. You are looking under the microscope for hours trying to find a single seminiferous tubule with a little bit of a white stuff that you can try to tease it out. Include careful proofreading, editing, errors in grammar, spelling, punctuation, all of these things. I see many articles, many communication. People are just not paying attention. If you're not paying attention in the emails that you are sending to your colleagues, you absolutely are going to do the same thing when you're writing the manuscript, because you have that mindset. And I think if you change your mindset that I will not allow these mistakes in any kind of my communication, you will see the level of your writing will increase immediately, substantially. So nothing should be taken casually, whether you are writing a note on the WhatsApp or you are writing an email to your colleague. It all has to be done in a way that reflects your seriousness and your attention to detail. Clarity of purpose, a clear sense of purpose is really required for successful scientific writing. It includes identifying the research question, setting clear goals and objective, and framing the research in a most meaningful and relevant way. So without that, again, I mean, if you don't have a clarity of purpose, you are not going to be able to come out with any kind of meaningful information. Get feedback. I mean, of course, Dr. Walid and Dr. Henkel and Dr. Tomer are very busy. You have many people all around you. At least in the Global Andrology Forum, there are hundreds and hundreds of very qualified, very smart clinician researchers who are going to be delighted to give you the feedback on the article that you're writing. So don't hesitate to ask for feedback. It may not be very something which is very goody that you feel very good. I think if that is what you are getting, that means that that person is not honest. It has to be critical. It has to be positive. It has to be constructive. That really sets the tone to allow you to think back and go back and say, well, this is what I need to do to improve my writing. And that, I think, is something that needs to be done. Then I think the next point is select the right journal. If you haven't selected the right journal, you are thinking, no, my research is something that it should go to the Science, to the Nature, to the New England Journal of Medicine, when in actuality, the work is something which is kind of average or mediocre, or maybe appropriate for a good journal, but not necessarily the topmost journal in the world. So you need to be able to calibrate your work in terms of where it stands. You should not try to oversell and be disappointed and rejected again and again. And I have seen that in so many people, that they always say, well, I need to publish it in XYZ journal. I said, listen, that is not something very realistic. You need to look at the quality of work, look at the journal, what they are publishing, and see where you stand. And if you are not able to make that decision, you are going to be disappointed. Next is follow the journal's guideline. You have the journal gives a very detailed guideline. You need to read it. You need to read, understand the submission guideline, formatting requirement, follow the instructions. Because if you are submitting garbage type of writing and typing, the journal editor, when they look at it, they think that this person is just not good enough for their journal, because the author doesn't have even the time or any kind of discipline to even format their manuscript and do not follow the instructions that they have provided for you to read. So always follow the journal's guideline, making sure that you are preparing the manuscript according to their instruction. Write a compelling abstract. And I think you heard from Dr. Tomer how many times you have to repeat your important finding. And abstract is like a leg in the door. If you don't have an abstract, or it's like a trailer. If you cannot sell your idea through the abstract, then you are doomed. Then nothing will happen. So the abstract has to be where you put all your thoughts, all your energy in imagining how to explain your findings. Use appropriate language and style. And I think use clear and concise language, avoid jargon, technical terms, as you heard, and follow preferred style of the journal. Use active voice, avoid using passive voice where possible. Perseverance and discipline. I think this is absolutely essential. Scientific writing is a challenge, even for people like Dr. Walid. I can tell you how hard he works, and all of the people that you heard. I mean, it takes time. It just doesn't come, that you are sitting on the laptop and you just start typing and the manuscript will come. Lot of thinking, rethinking, reading. I mean, it is something sometimes it may come in the night like a eureka. I mean, sometimes I see Dr. Walid just running on the street without any clothes and say, eureka, I found it. I'm just joking. So I think these things are beautiful moments when it comes into your mind, and it is a mental thing. It is not something physical that the more you sit on the computer, you are just going to start typing and the manuscript will just start flowing, and next day you will publish in Human Reproduction. It doesn't happen. You really have to know the subject and follow the things that we are telling. So in summary, successful writing requires a combination of clear and concise writing, strong structure, attention to detail, good research skills, clarity of purpose, and the ability to adapt style, and lastly, perseverance and discipline, patience and discipline. But you have to work for it. Patience doesn't mean just say, well, I'm now tired, I'm going to sleep for next 10 hours. And then next day, I'm going to start working. If you do that, then of course, this is never going to end. And you will be writing the same manuscript in 10 years. So you have to work hard, just like the people that you heard before. I mean, they work extremely hard to get to where they are. So there is no substitute to hard work. So thank you very much. Let me ask Dr. Tomer, who wanted to reflect as well. So let me give him the chance. Tomer, it's all yours for 3 minutes. You have a slide, or you can speak just off the top.
Yeah, I'm just going to say a few things. I really want the key point that I want to say that you had here today, 3 presentations actually from a little bit different people with different background. That's very important not to be confused. You have a person that come from is kind of acting as a chief editor of a journal. He gave you the perspective from this point of view, how they look on the papers, how they judge when they arrive, and of course spoke about all the other things. And then you had a presentation where highly experienced medical writing with a deep background in education He gave you a certain run-up of of how you write a paper. And then the third person, myself, a person that comes from more basic research, a little bit to add a translation, but giving you how research discovery, when you discover something fundamental is presented. So just to keep things in context, how the three presentations are related to each other. I want to take again to my colleagues, Rupin Shah and Ashok for inviting us to do this event, and then Ralph Henkel and
Dr. Walid.
And Professor Dr. Walid Al-Ansir for really bringing it all together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tomer. Now we will have concluding remarks from Dr. Rupin Shah, our senior advisor of the Global Andrology Forum. So Liliana, can you play after Dr. Rupin's? There is going to be just 1 or 2 minutes of conclusion. So don't leave after Dr. Rupin's video is played. Stay on for 2 more minutes. Thank you.
Well, that brings us to the end of a wonderful. Well, that brings us to the end of a wonderful webinar, very illuminating and instructive. Writing scientific papers is very important for everyone, the clinician, the researcher, for medical sciences, and for the patient. For the clinical researcher, the act of putting their research onto paper is an act of discipline, a kind of internal audit. What did you do? Did you do it right? Were there lacunae? All of that comes to light in the process of putting it down on paper. For the researcher, the amount of reading that has to go into the writing of a paper can be extremely illuminating and clear up many areas of doubt or lacunae in knowledge, and thereby make the researcher far more aware in their subject. Medical science, of course, needs scientific writing. The entire evidence-based medicine is based upon good scientific papers, and in turn that translates into better patient care. The treatment that will be offered to patients is then based on the cumulative experience of experts from around the world. Scientific writing is required at every stage in one's career. For the junior clinician or researcher, it's your first steps towards recognition. For the mid-career person, it is the very important step in career advancement. For the professor, the papers published are evidence of the work that the department is doing. So at every level, it is important that what one does, thinks, researches, be put onto paper and be shared with people. And that was the purpose of this webinar, to help improve the scientific papers that we write, and our 3 speakers have done a wonderful job. I'm not going to try and summarize their messages, that would take too long, but we will try and put their talks up on the website for a limited period of time. So those of you who need to revise anything that you've heard and couldn't get completely could do so. I would just end with 2 messages on scientific paper writing. The first actually emerged when I was chatting with Professor Dr. Wahid, whom you heard speak earlier. And he told me, Rupin, when I'm writing a paper, I live and breathe that paper. It's there in the back of the mind when I'm eating or bathing or cycling. And often the best ideas pop up then and then get translated onto paper when I sit down to write. So a thought of a new way of presenting the data, or a new graph, or a new angle, it could come up at any time. So you need to feel the paper. It's not just a mechanical writing process following a structure. It'll be written in a structure. The paper has to evolve in your mind. Similarly, one other important message is that you need to know what you want to tell the reader. And that is very important. I get to review a lot of papers in GAF and otherwise, and often I find that the paper writer is so overwhelmed by the amount of research that he or she has done that they want to cram it all into the paper, whether it is directly relevant or not. And that just makes the paper lose direction. So it's very important sometimes to actually, from the results, jump to the conclusion, know what is it that you want to say, then work backwards. What is the thought process that will get you to the conclusions? And then what is the literature that you need to review to discuss the thought process that you've gone through? So with this, we come to the end of this wonderful session. And I'm very happy to thank all of you for participating, and a very, very special thanks to our three speakers who've put in a lot of thought and effort into creating this wonderful webinar. Those of you who have taken the pre-test, do remember to complete the post-test and look out for the next in our webinar series. Good day, good evening, good night.
Thank you very much, Rupin. I know you are physically also here attending the program. And I really appreciate your concluding remarks. I want to re-emphasize that this program is being recorded, and after the program has ended, we are going to edit as we always do. And once the video is checked for quality, we will notify all of you who have attended this program, as well as those who are members of Global Andrology Forum will see an announcement, and those who are registered for this program will also get an email with the link that they can go through our website of Global Andrology Forum and be able to access this video. So let me go to my last part, which is to tell you, let me see if I can play this. And then we have a short video that Liliana is going to play. So I just wanted to show you that you can become a member, as almost 600 members from 78 countries have done. And this is a organic growth where people are joining by listening to the work or reading about our work. And I think you can go to our website, which is globalandrologyforum.com. And there is a link on the website on how you may become a member. You don't have to become a member, but you can read information on our website. And as a member, you don't have to do the research. That is also your complete choice. There are a variety of ways that you can still upgrade your knowledge and understanding. And all of the activities that are part of the Global Andrology Forum can be reviewed on our website. Or you can talk to one of the member, if you know one, and discuss their experience. So I will encourage, we want to have the member from all parts of the world come from every part with different experiences, different backgrounds, to help raise the level of science in andrological field. And that is our dream, that is our vision. So I really welcome each and every one of you. And I want to thank each and every one of you for attending this program. We have a last slide, which Ms. Liliana is going to present. Before she presents, I also want to thank Liliana and for arranging this program, for webcasting, as well as Dr. Missy, who wasn't fully available today, but she helped in the background before. And I want to thank both of them, as well as our other research coordinator, Dr. Asli and Dr. Parisa, for their wonderful work helping the program of Global Andrology Forum. So Liliana, if you're ready, you can start, and we will end in 2 minutes.
This is a song about the Global Andrology Forum, empowering men's health, shaping the future together. Written by ChatGPT, performed by Neil Agarwal. Take 3. Men from all nations gather round with a common goal to be found, improving health and wellness for our fellow man's success. Global Andrology Forum, bringing hope and healing to the world. For every man in every land, together we take a stand. Experts from near and far share their knowledge without a bar, advancing science every day, making life better in every way. Global Andrology Forum, bringing hope and healing to the world. For every man in every land, together we take a stand. Let's work together side by side with compassion, love and pride. For the future, let us strive, make a difference, come alive. Global Andrology Forum, bringing hope and healing to the world. For every man in every land, together we take a stand. For every man, we'll find a cure with knowledge, strength, and love secure. Global Andrology Forum. For every man, for everyone.
That was a song that was written by ChatGPT, but was choreographed and played by my son, Neil Agarwal, and we played it at our annual retreat about 2 months ago. So this was the most appropriate ending. Rupin, do you have anything that you want to add before we finish the program?
I think this song is going to be our anthem, and it'll be played at the end of every program. It's been an amazingly successful program. And once again, thank you to all our speakers. Thanks to you, Ashok, for that wonderful reflections. And thanks to all the people who have attended, I think 700 plus, with their enthusiasm and their interest. That's what keeps the Global Andrology Forum going. So thank you very much, everyone. And good day, good evening, good night.
Thank you. This program has now ended. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you. Bye-bye.